In the sprawling city of New Seoul, the morning light caught the edges of towering buildings, casting long shadows across streets that hummed with quiet desperation. Jae-won Park stood by the window of her small apartment, watching the world below. Her fingers traced the edge of a holographic display showing Earth's latest rejection from the Galactic Confederation. The year was 2287, and humanity had become nothing more than a whisper in the vast cosmic conversation. Decades of technological advancement seemed to mean nothing to the alien civilizations that dominated the stars. Trade routes, diplomatic channels, and interstellar networks remained firmly closed to humans, who were seen as primitive, volatile, and ultimately irrelevant. Jae-won worked at the Earth Defense Research Center, a facility that was more a monument to hope than a serious strategic installation. Most of her colleagues had long since given up, their dreams of space exploration crushed by repeated dismissals and silent rejections. But she was different. Her eyes held a spark that refused to be extinguished. The research center was a maze of half-completed projects and abandoned theories. Prototype engines sat collecting dust, and experimental weapon designs were filed away in forgotten archives. Yet Jae-won continued her work, developing adaptive technologies that seemed to dance between impossible and brilliant. Her current project focused on psychological warfare algorithms, a concept that most alien strategists found incomprehensible. Humans, they believed, were too emotional, too unpredictable to be taken seriously. But Jae-won saw this as their greatest strength. Outside, the city reflected humanity's current state. Massive billboards advertised space tourism that would never happen. Simulation centers offered virtual experiences of galactic adventures, a pale substitute for real exploration. Young people dreamed of stars they would never touch, of civilizations that wanted nothing to do with them. Jae-won's workspace was cluttered but precise. Holographic displays flickered with complex calculations, showing intricate patterns of human potential. She had discovered something unique, a way to translate human adaptability into strategic models that defied conventional military thinking. Her team was small but dedicated, a handful of engineers, programmers, and strategists who refused to accept humanity's marginalized status. They worked long hours fueled by coffee and an impossible dream. Most of their proposals were met with laughter or complete silence from the Galactic Confederation. The world outside seemed to mock their efforts. Alien ships occasionally passed through Earth's outer orbital zones, treating the planet like an invisible checkpoint. Diplomatic missions were rare and always carried an undertone of condescension. Humans were seen as children playing with technologies they barely understood. But Jae-won knew something was coming. Her research suggested that the current galactic balance was fragile. The advanced civilizations that ignored humanity were blind to their own vulnerabilities. Humanity's greatest weapon was its ability to adapt, to see solutions where others saw only problems. Her latest algorithm was revolutionary. It could predict conflict patterns by analyzing psychological responses rather than traditional military data. Where alien strategists relied on mathematical models, Jae-won's system understood the human capacity for unexpected action. The research center's funding was minimal. Government support had dwindled as hope faded, but Jae-won and her team continued, believing that their moment would come. They collected data, ran simulations, and prepared for a future that seemed increasingly unlikely. As evening approached, Jae-won looked out over the city. Lights began to twinkle, creating a landscape that was both beautiful and melancholic. Somewhere in those streets, people continued their lives, unaware of the potential that lay dormant in human potential. She understood something that most had forgotten. Humanity's strength wasn't in its technology or its military might. It was in its spirit, the ability to dream, to fight, to survive against impossible odds. The aliens who dismissed them had no idea what was brewing beneath the surface. The holographic display flickered, showing another rejection notice from the Galactic Confederation. But Jae-won smiled. Rejection was just another word for opportunity. And humanity was about to prove just how opportunity could transform into something extraordinary. Her fingers moved across the display, continuing her work. Outside, the city of New Seoul continued its endless dance of light and shadow, carrying within it the seeds of a revolution that no one saw coming. The night settled in, quiet and patient, holding the promise of a story that was about to unfold. The first signs came quietly, almost unnoticed. Deep space monitoring stations picked up strange energy signatures that didn't match any known technological patterns. Astronomers initially dismissed them as sensor glitches or random cosmic interference. Yoon-ki. Kim was working the night shift when the first real warning came through. His monitoring screen flickered with unusual readings, massive objects moving between star systems at impossible speeds. They left no traditional engine trails, no standard radiation signatures. They were something entirely different. The Crimson Swarm arrived like a nightmare made real. Massive biomechanical ships that seemed to breathe and pulse with an alien intelligence. Where they passed, entire planetary systems simply disappeared. Not destroyed, erased. No debris, no radiation. Just empty space where civilizations had existed for thousands of years. Initial reports from the Stellar Alliance were confused and terrifying. Advanced species with technologies beyond human comprehension were being consumed in days. Planetary defenses that had stood for centuries crumbled like paper against these invaders. The alien diplomatic missions that had previously ignored humanity now looked desperate. Their sleek ships arrived in Earth's orbit, carrying representatives from multiple advanced civilizations. Their communication was no longer condescending but filled with a raw, primal fear that humans had never witnessed before. "We need help," they said. Though the words were never spoken directly, their technological translations carried a desperation that spoke volumes. The Crimson Swarm moved with a collective intelligence that defied understanding. They weren't simply conquering, they were consuming. Entire technological ecosystems were absorbed, integrated into their massive biological network. Planets became nothing more than resources to be processed and transformed. Military analysts around the world watched in silent terror. Traditional warfare concepts meant nothing. Against an enemy that could adapt faster than any known defense system, the invaders seemed to learn and modify their attack strategies in real time, absorbing information from each encounter. Hyun-ki's monitoring station became a crucial information hub. He began tracking the swarm's movement patterns, noticing subtle details that others missed. Their invasion wasn't random, it was methodical, almost surgical in its approach. The first completely consumed civilization was the Varial Confederation, a species considered the most technologically advanced in the known galaxy. Their entire network of planets disappeared in less than 72 hours. No distress signals, no survivors. Just empty space where millions of lives had existed moments before. Earth's scientific community was divided. Some believed this was an extinction-level threat. Others saw it as an unprecedented opportunity to study an entirely new form of existence. Research facilities went into overdrive, trying to understand the Crimson Swarm's fundamental nature. Jae-won Park's research suddenly became critically important. Her adaptive algorithm systems, once considered theoretical, now represented humanity's potential last hope. If anyone could find a weakness in this seemingly invincible enemy, it would be someone who understood the power of unpredictability. Diplomatic channels across the galaxy were in complete chaos. Species that had been rivals for millennia now found themselves facing a common threat. The Stellar Alliance, once a bureaucratic nightmare of competing interests, now scrambled to create any kind of unified response. But the Crimson Swarm kept coming. They moved between star systems like a living wave, consuming everything in their path. Traditional weapons had no effect. Energy barriers dissolved. Planetary shields became nothing more than temporary obstacles. Hyun-ki noticed something unique in their movement patterns. Despite their seemingly random consumption, there was an underlying logic. They were selecting specific technological systems, almost like a collective intelligence was making calculated choices about what to absorb. As panic spread across multiple civilizations, Earth remained surprisingly calm. Years of being ignored had prepared humans for facing impossible odds. While other species were falling apart, human researchers were already developing potential counter-strategies. The diplomatic missions that arrived carried representatives from species that had once laughed at humanity. Now they looked at humans, with a mixture of desperation and hope. They were bringing more than just a warning. They were bringing a request for help. Humanity's moment was approaching. The galaxy that had rejected them now needed them more than ever. And nobody understood this better than Jae-won and Hyun-ki, who saw in the Crimson Swarm not just a threat, but an unprecedented challenge. The invasion continued, silently, relentlessly, and somewhere in the background, human minds were already working on a solution that no one expected. The research facility buzzed with an energy unlike anything seen before. Jae-won's team worked in shifts, their eyes burning with determination and lack of sleep. The Crimson Swarm's invasion had transformed their theoretical work into humanity's last hope. Hyun-ki brought the latest data capture from the alien encounters. Strange energy signatures danced across holographic displays, revealing patterns that no conventional computer could decode. But Jae-won's adaptive algorithm saw something different, a language of movement, of strategy that went beyond traditional warfare. Humans had always been different. Where other species saw limitations, humans saw opportunities. Where advanced civilizations relied on complex technological solutions, humans understood the power of unexpected thinking. The first breakthrough came from an unlikely source. A junior researcher named Min Ho discovered that human emotional responses could be translated into tactical algorithms. Fear, hope, anger, these weren't weaknesses, but complex computational systems that could predict and interrupt alien attack patterns. Prototype weapons took shape. They weren't massive energy cannons or advanced plasma generators. Instead, they were adaptive systems that could change their fundamental nature in milliseconds. Traditional alien detection methods would become useless against such unpredictable technology. Military leaders from various alien civilizations watched in disbelief. Human strategy meetings looked chaotic, almost random. But beneath the apparent disorder was a precision that defied conventional understanding. They didn't plan battles. They created living, breathing, strategic ecosystems. Jae-won's team developed something revolutionary. A communication algorithm that could understand the Crimson Swarm's collective intelligence by mimicking human psychological adaptation. Where other species saw a solid wall, humans saw potential entry points. Training. Simulators showed remarkable results. Human pilots could react to alien attack patterns in ways that seemed impossible. Their response times weren't just fast, they were fundamentally different. They didn't follow rules. They created new ones in real time. The first test mission shocked everyone. A small human squadron equipped with the new adaptive technologies encountered a Crimson Swarm advanced unit. What should have been an immediate destruction became something entirely unexpected. The human ships moved like living things. They didn't just dodge attacks, they anticipated them. They didn't just defend, they disrupted the very communication networks of the alien invasion force. Each ship became a living, thinking entity that could modify its own strategy in microseconds. Alien military advisors watched the combat recordings repeatedly. Humans weren't just fighting, they were communicating with the enemy in a language of pure strategy. Their weakness became their greatest strength. Psychological warfare took on a new meaning. The adaptive algorithms could predict not just movement, but potential emotional responses of the collective alien intelligence. They were fighting an enemy by understanding its fundamental nature, not just its technological capabilities. Training facilities around Earth transformed. Young pilots and strategists weren't just learning combat techniques, they were learning how to think differently. Every simulation became a lesson in breaking rules, in seeing beyond the obvious. Hyun-ki's tactical teams developed communication disruption technologies that made traditional electronic warfare look primitive. They could introduce emotional chaos into the Crimson Swarm's collective intelligence, creating moments of uncertainty that could be exploited. The alien diplomatic missions watched in growing excitement. Humanity wasn't just offering a defense, they were offering a completely new way of understanding conflict. Their technologies didn't just resist the invasion, they threatened to fundamentally change how warfare was understood. J1 understood something critical. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about proving that humanity's perceived weaknesses, their emotional complexity, their ability to adapt, their willingness to break rules, were actually their most powerful weapons. The first major confrontation was approaching. Alien. Species from across the galaxy watched with a mixture of hope and terror. Humanity, the civilization they had ignored and mocked for generations, was about to show them something extraordinary. As preparation intensified, a strange calm settled over Earth. The cities continued their daily rhythms. People went to work. Children went to school. But underneath this normalcy, something powerful was brewing. The unexpected weapon wasn't a technology. It was humanity itself, unpredictable, adaptable, and ready to prove its worth to a galaxy that had never truly understood its potential. The Crimson Swarm was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The battle began like a whisper and erupted into a symphony of chaos. Hyunki's squadron moved through deep space, their adaptive ships dancing between massive Crimson Swarm vessels. Each human pilot understood something the aliens didn't. Defeat was never an option. Jaewon watched. From the command center, her fingers racing across holographic displays. The adaptive algorithms she had developed were no longer theoretical. They were living, breathing strategies that transformed human weakness into unprecedented strength. The first engagement shocked the entire galaxy. Where previous encounters had resulted in total alien civilization destruction, humans fought differently. They didn't just resist, they communicated. Their ships moved with an intelligence that seemed almost alive, anticipating attack patterns, milliseconds before they happened. Alien military commanders from multiple civilizations watched the combat recordings in disbelief. Human pilots weren't following any known strategic manual. They were creating strategies in real time, turning each potential defeat into an unexpected victory. One small human squadron, led by Captain Jae-hoon Kim, encountered a Crimson Swarm battle group that had already consumed 3 advanced planetary systems. Traditional military logic suggested total annihilation. But humans didn't understand traditional logic. The battle became a dance of impossible movements. Human ships didn't just dodge, they infiltrated. They didn't just attack, they disrupted. Each vessel became a living weapon that could modify its own programming in microseconds. The Crimson Swarm found itself fighting an enemy that changed faster than it could analyze. Psychological warfare reached new levels. The adaptive algorithms could introduce emotional complexity into the alien collective intelligence. Moments of uncertainty became fatal weaknesses. Where the swarm expected predictable resistance, humans offered controlled chaos. Communication networks across the galaxy lit up. Reports came streaming in. Humans were not just defending, they were pushing back. Planets that were moments away from total consumption suddenly found themselves with a fighting chance. The Stellar Alliance, which had previously ignored humanity, now watched with growing excitement. These weren't just military encounters. They were fundamental shifts in understanding conflict, strategy, and survival. Hyunki's tactical team developed communication disruption technologies that made traditional electronic warfare look like child's play. They could introduce emotional complexity into the Crimson Swarm's collective intelligence, creating moments of uncertainty that could be exploited. Training facilities around Earth had transformed. Young pilots weren't just learning combat techniques. They were learning how to think differently. Every simulation became a lesson in breaking rules and seeing beyond the obvious. The psychological impact was just as powerful as the military victories. The Crimson Swarm, which had consumed entire civilizations without hesitation, now found itself facing an enemy that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. Jaewon understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about proving that humanity's perceived weaknesses, their emotional complexity, their ability to adapt, their willingness to break rules, were actually their most powerful weapons. Alien diplomatic missions that had once treated humans with condescension now approached with genuine respect. They weren't just seeking assistance, they were seeking understanding. Humanity had transformed from a marginalized civilization to the galaxy's unexpected hope. The turning tide wasn't just a military phenomenon, it was a fundamental shift in how intelligent life understood conflict, strategy, and survival. Humans had become something more than just another species. They were a force of adaptation. Captain Jaehoon's final transmission during one critical battle captured the essence of human resilience. "We don't fight because we must," he said. "We fight because we can change the very nature of the fight." As the battles continued, something remarkable happened. The Crimson Swarm, which had consumed entire civilizations, found itself facing an enemy that didn't just resist, it transformed. Each encounter became a lesson, each battle a demonstration of human potential. The galaxy watched, the tide was turning, and humanity, once forgotten and ignored, was writing a new chapter in interstellar history. The unexpected had become inevitable. The final battle arrived like a storm that had been brewing for generations. Humanity's entire strategic force assembled, a collection of adaptive ships that looked more like living organisms than traditional military vessels. The Crimson Swarm faced an enemy it could never have anticipated. Jae-won stood on the central command platform, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that mapped entire star systems. Years of research, countless sleepless nights, and an unbreakable human spirit had led to this moment. Behind her, representatives from dozens of alien civilizations watched with a mixture of hope and terror. Hyun-Ki's voice crackled through the communication systems. His squadron moved with a precision that defied traditional understanding of space combat. Each ship was more than a machine. It was a living, thinking entity that could adapt faster than the enemy could comprehend. The Crimson Swarm had consumed entire civilizations, erased planetary systems, and believed itself invincible. But humanity represented something it had never encountered before, an intelligence that didn't just fight, but transformed the very nature of conflict. The battle unfolded across multiple star systems simultaneously. Human strategies moved like liquid, flowing around the massive alien vessels. Where other civilizations would have collapsed, humans found opportunities. Each potential defeat became a chance for unexpected victory. Alien military commanders watched, in disbelief. Human ships didn't just defend, they communicated. They didn't just attack, they understood. The adaptive algorithms developed by Jae-won's team turned psychological complexity into the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. One critical moment defined the entire conflict. A small human squadron, led by Captain Min-Soo Park, infiltrated the central communication network of the Crimson Swarm. Instead of destroying, they began to understand. They didn't just break the enemy's systems, they rewrote them. The psychological warfare reached its peak. Humanity introduced emotional complexity into the alien collective intelligence. Moments of uncertainty became fatal weaknesses. The Crimson Swarm found itself fighting an enemy that could change faster than it could analyze. Communication networks across the galaxy erupted with reports of unprecedented victories. Planets that were moments away from total consumption suddenly found themselves with a fighting chance. The tide wasn't just turning, it was transforming. Jae-won understood the deeper strategy. This was more than a military victory. It was a demonstration of human potential, the ability to turn perceived weaknesses into unprecedented strengths. Emotional complexity, adaptability, and the willingness to break rules became humanity's greatest weapons. The final confrontation lasted what seemed like both an instant and an eternity. Human ships moved with a living intelligence that defied traditional understanding of combat. They didn't just resist the Crimson Swarm, they fundamentally changed its nature. As the last alien vessels dissolved, a strange silence fell across the star systems. The Stellar Alliance watched in complete amazement. The civilization they had once ignored had just saved multiple intelligent species from total destruction. Diplomatic missions that had once treated humans with condescension now approached with genuine reverence. Humanity had transformed from a marginalized civilization to the galaxy's unexpected saviors. They weren't just another species. They were a force of unprecedented adaptation. Hyun-Ki's final transmission captured the moment perfectly. "We didn't just fight," he said. "We showed the universe what it means to truly survive." The command center erupted in a mixture of exhaustion and celebration. Alien representatives approached Jae-won, no longer seeing a human, but a strategic genius who had fundamentally changed galactic understanding of conflict and survival. Earth, once ignored and marginalized, now stood at the center of interstellar diplomacy. The same civilization that had been rejected for generations was now being asked to lead, to teach, to guide. As the dust settled, humanity had done more than defeat an enemy. They had proven that true strength isn't about technology or firepower. It's about the ability to adapt, to understand, and to transform. The Crimson Swarm was gone, but the lesson humanity had taught the galaxy would remain forever. They were no longer outcasts. They were the defenders of hope.